Hey there ladies and gents, welcome back to another Monster Squad video, and in this one, we're going to be tackling the Beauty or the Beast raid. So, first things first, we've got to pick our monsters to bring in, and for this, I'd recommend sticking to one or two at the most attribute types. For this, I'm bringing in a normal type and fire type team setups. I would not recommend bringing in a third or fourth attribute type because it'll oversaturate the amount of monsters you have or the variation of monsters you have, and you won't be able to get a very efficient passive and ability synergy. And it'll basically just start to fall apart by the end of the run if you have to switch out monsters and you don't have a lot of 6 stars to back them up with. Now, I wouldn't just take all the monsters from the top rows of your box. I would actually look at the passives and abilities they offer your team. For example, you don't want to bring in too many defenders, because 1 or 2 defenders should be able to cut it, and if your defenders don't survive that long, you probably need to farm out a little bit more and level them up before you attempt this raid. You shouldn't be losing more than 1 or 2 defenders. If you're getting that far, then you might have to go do some farming. But if you can handle it with 1 or 2 defenders, definitely bring 1 or 2 in. I'm bringing in my Metapanzer and my Aspica as a backup just in case Metapanzer dies. Then we want to focus on bringing in some support monsters. As you can see, I've got a Spooking, Angel Ami, an Ibomancer, and I actually also bring in the Wolverine. Now, I bring the Wolverine in because he reduces the enemy's defenses, and he comes into play on the boss floors. Most of this raid is fairly straightforward. We're just going to build a very solid defense team that we can switch monsters in and out of depending on which floor we need some help on. But the boss floors will stay relatively similar, and we're going to try to do a full all-out assault strategy on those guys. I know, usually we run defensive teams and go for the defense is the best offense kind of thing, but this time we are actually going offense is the best defense kind of thing, for the boss floors of course. So, as you can see, for the very first stage, I'm just going to go ahead and put Metapanzer, my best defender, in my leader position. Then, in my backup slots, I've got Glintfang, Anubis, Zakum, and Spooking. Now, all of these guys are interchangeable. You can switch them out for other dudes. These are not irreplaceable guys. For the Glintfang, you can bring in any AoE damage dealer with a damage passive. That is important. You have to keep a general symmetry for the types of passives and abilities you bring in. Glintfang has an AoE attack ability and a critical % increase. So if we're going to replace him, we have to keep the same general idea with the next monster we put in. So we might put in an Ibomancer because he also does an AoE attack and increases critical. Or if you've got somebody else, for example, say you had a Metapanzer you wanted to put in there, that could work as well, but we might not want to do that because his passive is an HP increase. We want that passive to be some sort of damage increase, so be it critical strike, be it critical damage, or just straight up damage itself. Any offensive style monster will do in that first slot. And then, the second slot we're bringing in an Anubis. I particularly like Anubis in here because he has a very strong AoE attack, but his passive is defensive. It gives our monsters 90% extra HP. That is almost doubling their HP. Now, if you don't have an Anubis style monster that also gives HP, you can replace this slot with another attacker type. So, anybody with high damage and a damage style passive. If you chose Critical Strike in the first slot, I would recommend Pure Damage in this slot, or vice versa, however you want to play it. But you do not want to stack up too many Critical Strikes, because even if you're critting for, 2k or 4k here and there, having 40% pure damage increase is just going to be better than critting for low numbers. You can get crits up to 10 or 16k if you stack damage. Then, our next monster is going to be a supportive defensive monster. Zakum is fantastic in this slot because he not only deals damage to the enemy, but he debuffs their damage output by 40% and gives our team an 80% extra HP boost, so he is a perfect monster to bring in there. If you don't have a Zakum style monster, I would recommend bringing in somebody with a defensive passive, so it can be anybody that increases REC of monsters, anything that increases the MP recovery of your leader, or anybody that debuffs the damage output of your opponents, or stuns them. Stuns can also count as supportive because they're effectively giving you more hit points. Then, our last monster, I would recommend bringing in some sort of buffer or healer. If you've got an MP recovery character on your team, you can go ahead and just have a buffer on this last slot. But if you only have HP increases like I do, I like to bring in the healer, because we've got so much HP that we actually start losing a lot of it since we can't put our shields up all the time due to low mana recovery. So the heal from the spooking actually helps us stay alive a little bit longer, and I recommend spooking in this slot just because he also increases HP and gives your entire team a damage boost whenever you use your heal. So it is an ideal monster. My setup here is almost perfect. I only want to replace the Glintfang on there with maybe a better AoE damage dealer. I just don't have one on my person, so I don't replace him. But as long as you follow these general tips, you should be clearing the basic floors with relative ease. I used the same team the entire way through. You'll see that I kind of flake on my mind a little bit here and there. I kind of want to change a couple of them out, but then, you know, my logic gets the better of me and I just stick with what works, and then we go ahead and punch through these regular floors. Now, for the boss floors are very important floors because you have a 20-second timer to deal a ton of damage to the boss before they get a power-up. This power-up is going to make them more tanky, more defensive, faster casting, and more damage output. These bad boys will one-shot your entire team if you can't kill them fast enough. So as you can see, I'm switching out my monsters right here, and I want to bring in the highest damage output monsters I can bring in, and let me go over this strategy real quick for you guys. My leader monster is a Pentacorn. He is a very strong attacker with high damage, and I prefer Pentacorn here because his third ability is a 330% damage with a 4-second stun. That is a very, very good stun because it'll delay the boss's casting bar, and even if he gets the 20-second or 40-second power-up, he's gonna be stuck there casting a extended ability because we've stunned him so much. Now, next up is the Magnus. I bring him in because he does a huge single target damage ability and increases our monster's damage output by 40%. Next up is Mantiroar. He also does a huge single target damage ability with some bleed. That one's just kind of in there to help us with a little bit more damage. And the next one, do you see a pattern here? This guy is another single target damage dealer, but his ability as Wolverine is going to be to decrease the enemy's defenses, and he also increases our normal monster's attack by 40%. So as you can see, we've got an 125% increase in damage output for our normal monsters. If you do have another one, you can go ahead and put that guy in there in the Angel Ami's position. I prefer bringing in an Angel Ami or a Connell or a Shivia or a Chivelle, anything that gives MP recovery to your leader, because even though you can sneak in a little bit more damage in that last slot, I prefer MP recovery because it lets you get a couple more stuns out from your leader on the boss, delaying that ability a little bit longer, and I've actually found out that that is very, very clutch in some situations. With the times where I took in a damage dealer, we got the boss very low, but the boss got his ability off before we could kill him off, and he wiped our entire team. So we still finished the raid, but we took some losses, and I like to play very safely when we can. We just want to make sure we finish. We don't want to waste our key, you know? So I like to bring in the MP recovery, get a couple more stuns in. If you are missing another attacker monster, you can go ahead and switch them out for another MP recovery monster, giving your leader even more stuns. If you can, honestly, just stun lock the boss to death. It is completely possible to do so. The only thing I'd be wary about is that if you do take too long, the boss's ability will become an instant cast and will one-shot your entire team very, very quickly. So that is not good at all. Alrighty guys, now I pre-recorded this little session, so I'm gonna let it play for you guys, and if you have any questions and concerns, just leave them in the comment section below. I will be more than glad to answer any questions you guys have. Thanks for watching, guys.